Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. This is Andrew Turner, founder and host of the G&T Sessions podcast. And today we have Mr. Dan Mallin. How are you, Dan?
I'm wonderful. Thank you. How are you, Andrew?
Not too bad at all. Good to see you. Good to see that you're now out in the country, hanging out with the greenery and the trees.
It's just starting to green out.
Okay. And where are you today? Where are you joining us from today, then?
I'm outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota, but it's in 70 miles outside on a farm in Wisconsin.
Oh, wow. Right. Okay. So you're on a farm.
When we say farm, that would be, it used to be a farm. The field behind me used to have corn in it 20 years ago. And my children and I planted, 30,000 trees in that field. So
30,000 trees?
Yes.
Wow. That's impressive. That's impressive.
I'm trying to neutralize my carbon footprint.
That's really cool. So obviously, we'll find out a bit more about Dan and his little world. Yeah, wink, wink, and why, for people who are watching this episode on YouTube, why the lovely Scarlett Johansson is looking over my shoulder, my right shoulder or left shoulder, whichever look where you want to look at it. But we'll come to that in a second. So I know that we met a while ago, and you were talking about some of the stuff that you were working on and some of the journey. But I suppose before I got to get into that stuff, was what gets you up in the morning these days?
Well, it's interesting. So I have a company goes by the name of Lucy, and their product, and we. I
think your jacket's a giveaway.
I like to. It's my branded uniform. The best part is I just have 6 different versions of this. So every day I just pick one.
Different color.
They're all blue, but they're different thicknesses and depends on the weather, depends on all kinds of things. But
with every tech company, the swag's the most important thing, obviously. Yeah.
Well, you know the process of innovation, right?
No.
But, yeah, you have an idea. You print T-shirts, and then you develop the product.
Ah, really? Okay.
Yeah,
is this? Have you told Eric Ries? Is this the new lean startup method? Then it's called swag, lean swag startup.
I mean, and going back to Guy Kawasaki and the art of the start. It's about celebrating every meaningless milestone. We rented an office, we got furniture. We printed we have a logo and we printed it on, stationery. Those are the things you celebrate, not we shipped the product, we sold the product. We
got investment. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. It's a funny world that way. Actually, the biggest thing that happens by wearing the shirt or whatever I have on is that, the clients go, I didn't get one of those. It cost me $20 each time I'm in a meeting with
it's
one
like
of our clients.
Swag envy. Swag envy is what we call it.
Yeah, and I mean, the best part of that is it happens at all levels. So, the people we work with every day, we already took care of. But all of a sudden, we're with the CIO or the CMO or the vice president. That's a really nice shirt. I'd be happy to send you one.
Well, no. I mean, my best story about swag. You see, you probably know Atlassian. Atlassian, the Australian software company. Yeah. So when I was at WANdisco, me and Dave Richards, the CEO, when I was running worldwide sales, we went down to Australia, went down to Sydney, and we went into their reception in Darling Harbour, and we met see Mike Cannon-Brooks, and he comes down the stairs in his surfer shorts, no shoes. Yeah. And he goes, Andrew, he says, some really good T-shirts that we just got in. Go and help yourself, because they have these really awesome Atlassian T-shirts, like different funky designs. They were like collector's items, basically. But their whole wall was just like T-shirts and swag, basically. It was like swag heaven. So, but he created like a really amazing community across the world. I mean, obviously they did great software as well and continue to do that. But it's just such a funny intro. It was just anyway. We digress.
Yeah, It's well. Well, it's the same thing. Print T-shirts. That's what I'm saying.
Could be a new business. It could be a new business unit. It's a new P&L. It's a new strategic business unit. Swag.
Yeah, I was at Apple in the '80s.
Okay.
And so there were some great T-shirts and some great parties. So
okay.
So back to Lucy. Let me tell you what she does. I think that's where we started, right? It was what gets me up in the morning.
Well, it could be anything. You see, it could be running a software company as a CEO, like you do, or it could be you go for a run, or you could be you meditate. I don't know, whatever. Shoot, go for it.
The short answer is I don't run, but I do exercise, and I get these woods. The cool part is, especially in COVID, we've been able to go out every day and walk in the woods. And you see nobody, but you're outside and doing things. So that's pretty awesome.
That's very cool.
If I step aside, there's my wife and 2 dogs.
All right.
Out in the woods on a walk.
Fantastic.
So back to Lucy. She's an enterprise knowledge management software, and what does that mean? Is she helps companies find answers in their data, but the data we look at is unstructured data or focus on.
Okay.
So it's all the PowerPoints, PDFs, and Word documents, and also audio and video files. So if you ask for a natural language question, just like I would ask anybody in my office a question, he comes back with the answer. And the answers aren't people think it's like a search engine and it has aspects like that. But what Lucy does is brings back here's the list of PowerPoint decks. He brings back, here is a slide with the answer on it.
Oh, really?
So,
okay.
So, yeah, I mean, it's mind-blowing.
So it curates to the actual object. Okay.
Yes. Subcomponent. It could be a graph. It could be a paragraph. It could, but the easiest way to visualize it is it's the slide in the deck.
Wow.
And so to be able to drill into that needle in the haystack and find the answer. And then you think about all the companies we've worked with and worked for and how many PowerPoints are created every day in the Fortune, Global 1000 kind of companies.
Have you got a number? Do you know how many it is? Do you know what the latest numbers are?
So I've heard lots of different numbers, but I have talked to individuals, and it's in the hundreds of thousands of PowerPoints created every day. And I don't know how many, because it's not really a number that anybody knows, because there's no meter at Microsoft that tells them that. They don't. It doesn't work that way.
No.
But the other thing is, and this is the craziest thing, and we have actual data from data storage companies that tell us that 98% of those documents that are created inside organizations are never opened again after 90 days.
What?
So 98%.
98% after 90 days?
Yeah, they store them forever, or 7 years, or whatever the retention policy is. They store these documents. They have spent money converting data into knowledge, right? Because you have data, you put it in a PowerPoint. It's now interpreted knowledge.
Yeah, into insight or whatever. Yeah.
Right, and nobody knows what's in them and cannot use them. And the other crazy number is, again, this is our clients' data, but their average workers are spending 4 hours a week just looking for stuff. So
10%, at least 10% of their working week is just searching for stuff.
Yeah, we know it's here somewhere, and we're looking for it. But the other thing that doesn't really calculate in is I didn't find it, and now I'm recreating it. So that's just the looking. If I didn't, and so I'm looking for a bunch of stuff, and maybe I'm looking for data that I then turn into a PowerPoint. So then I have another 4 hours that I'm spending creating something. So it's 10, 20, 30% of your time that could be saved if I could just find the work that Andrew did 3 months ago.
Oh my God.
And I have no way of doing that. And then the other cool thing is we don't require any uploading of data. We don't require any tagging of data. Lucy does all of that automatically. So you hook her.
Lucy, you've been very busy. You know, I thought you were a very famous Swedish or American movie star, and you've been secretly doing this growth hack with Dan, building some amazing software. What's going on, Luke? What's going on, Scarlett?
Well, Scarlett, Scarlett and I hang out. Colin Jost, her husband, we're all good friends. So,
right, okay.
That said, my wife thinks we named Lucy the product after one of our dogs, Lucy. So we got. So please don't tell her.
Sorry. Your secret's safe with me, Dan. Don't worry. Yeah.
Yeah. If we could. It's great. The dawn of time. Lucy. There's lots of references to Lucy and knowledge, and in great ways. Although we started off very focused with IBM Watson.
Oh yeah.
And so 5 years ago, when kind of Watson was the only game in town, we were based on some Watson original technology, much of which they've deprecated at IBM today. So we built a lot of our own IP around it. But Thomas Watson, the CEO, there was actually two Thomas Watsons, the CEOs of IBM. Had a daughter or granddaughter, Lucinda Watson.
Oh, right, okay.
And so we named Lucy as the daughter of Watson. And Lucinda is actually alive and lives in, I think, San Diego. And we're linked in together, having never talked to each other.
Met her?
No. I did reach out to her.
Maybe when we publish this episode, in a few weeks, we can like shout out, big shout out to Lucinda. Hello, Lucinda Watson. If you're listening.
Yeah, because the answer is she clearly cares about everything that we're doing with her name.
That's
cool.
Just
doesn't know it.
Well, then you've got a bit of a dilemma. You see, when you do your big global launch, lightning strike, into the market, if you've not already done one, then it's like you have to toss a coin. You go, okay, do I get Lucinda Watson there, or do I get Scarlett Johansson there? It's a big call. It's a difficult call.
Well, actually,
or maybe get both of them there. See, even better.
Scarlett keeps calling, and we just don't want to.
Scarlett, stop calling me, please. Stop calling me. It's embarrassing, right? It's embarrassing.
I don't have time, Scarlett. Well, actually, let's put the challenge out there. Let's see who calls me first.
Oh, here we go. Right. You put it out in the universe. It's like, special. Right, okay. Hello. Oh, Scarlett, I told you, look, Dan's not available. Stop calling me, right? Stop calling me. It's embarrassing, all right? See, look, she just called me then right in the middle of the podcast episode from Hollywood.
That's what I'm saying. She interrupts all the time.
But you see, you said you're in LA. You see, you've just come back from LA, haven't you?
Yes.
You lucky man. He's like,
Scarlett lives in New York.
Does she? All right, okay.
Well, when I say she lives, like I know where she lives. She's married to Colin Jost, who is the on Saturday Night Live. So they're live in New York. So he's the head writer for Saturday Night Live.
Oh, is he? Is she married to him now? Yeah. Okay. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I was watching. John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd when they were the Blues Brothers, right?
Oh yeah.
So there's an episode on YouTube which I watched the other day, which is absolutely brilliant, and it's basically Soul Man, the singing Soul Man, right?
Yeah.
And literally the dancing that Dan Aykroyd is doing on that. It's just absolutely brilliant. Yeah. In fact, I was trying to practice it in my house. So I was thinking maybe I could do a skit, when I dress up as Dan Aykroyd at some point, as like the Blues Brothers, and do this kind of like dance. It's like this, it's like John Belushi. Yeah. John Belushi then goes back to the back and he like sings with him when they're doing the harmonies and stuff like that. It's fantastic video. It's like, I think it's like 19. It might be, is it 79 or something like that? It's 19. It's quite an old one. But inspired.
Well, I could do the Belushi side. We could do it together. The problem is that Belushi does cartwheels in that video.
Yeah, no, exactly. He does a cartwheel right at the beginning. Yes.
So
you might need a bit of a practice before we go on the stage doing that.
Right.
So that sounds really amazing what you're working on with Lucy. I mean, that is a really big problem that you're trying to find people help to discover through unstructured data and search. Is that kind of data discovery through unstructured data? Is that kind of what your mission is? I don't know.
It's empowering and delighting knowledge workers, right? And it's really interesting because we come out of marketing, and so we've been selling to marketing as our product market fit, and it's a home run, and everybody, it's a universal problem. There's not any company that I'm aware of that just has a solve that it's already there, right? Kind of all of the legacy providers, they do stuff, but they are not successful in what we're doing today.
Mm-hmm.
So the interest, we've been, our kind of lead sell into an organization is exactly what I described. This marketing research. There's so much money spent inside of that. Now that said, we've got a huge insurance company that uses it for their IT documentation. And you talk about, because part of what we do is, we attach to the repository. So if you're using SharePoint, OneDrive, Office 365, Teams as an example, Bots, Dropbox, Salesforce, we just connect to it. Lucy reads all of the documents, creates some metadata so she can find them.
Right.
But the documents stay right where they were. So we don't actually remove them from the server.
Yeah, okay. You don't move them. Yeah.
We don't keep them. We just access them.
Yeah.
So Lucy's busy reading all the documents, adds, changes, deletes. So you remove the document, it's removed from Lucy. It's pretty awesome. Well, at this insurance company, they connected it to Jira from GitHub.
Mm-hmm.
A whole different set of kind of repositories of documents in exactly the same type. And so they're busy. Hey, I need to know, how do I connect my application to this database? And so Lucy became the subject matter expert for their 8,000 IT people.
Wow.
And like, we have another company that wanted to test something, and so we put in the huge PDF, which are aircraft engine maintenance manuals, and Lucy finds.
You mean like Boeing or GE? You mean GE engines, something like
that? Yeah, the engine side. So Boeing. Boeing. None of the engines are made
Pratt & Whitney or something. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
So, but the idea is, so huge repositories, big data, big document. The other thing is we do three different things. The primary thing that Lucy provides is what I just described: those data repositories of documents and video, audio files. So the same way, if you want to say, hey, I could ask a question of my podcast library, or my customer research focus groups, put in all that video. There was a woman that talked about coupons at Arby's, and you can search by that, and next thing you know, you're queued up to the second in the video. Right?
Oh, right. So, oh, really? Wow. What's Arby's? Sorry, what's Arby's?
It's a restaurant chain.
Okay.
In the U.S., McDonald's.
Okay. Burger King. Okay.
Burger King, exactly. And so, but there are also two other sets of repositories that we work with. The second set is purchase research. So if you're, or purchase data. So if you're a subscriber to eMarketer or Business Intelligence Insider, if you're a Kantar,
all the data sources like Nielsen and stuff like that.
Sources.
Yeah.
So we also search through APIs that repository at the same time. And then the third thing is we hook up to your BI systems, or so if you have Power BI or Tableau or some Zappy, Black Swan, Knowledge Hound. So think about this, Lucy. You ask a question one question, natural language. What are the effects of COVID on consumer buying products in the UK?
Yeah, like a normal English question. Yeah.
And then and Lucy never delivers more than 10 answers. But 10 answers could come from 10 different locations, or 5 from one, 5 from another. So, and she prioritizes what those answers are. So think about this: you could get a couple answers from, a PowerPoint and a video that's in your SharePoint. You get an answer from eMarketer and Nielsen that's in your research component, and you get an answer from a couple dashboards that you have in Tableau. So those answer units come up, and so again, you can see the slide. You can the video is queued up and will play for you. That research that you're already paying for, which is most underused in your organization, because most people don't know. And what I'm describing, if you did it in the old world, you'd have to log into 6, 10 places to find out. And nobody does it. And then the last piece is it brings up the dashboard, but in the Tableau dashboard that's created in the IT organization, it already exists. We bring that up, and you can manipulate the data through that dashboard in Lucy. And then in all cases, you can click through. So I can click through and get the whole video. I can click through and get the whole PowerPoint.
Okay. So it links to the original source.
I get to Nielsen or eMarketer, and I click through and get to Tableau. And it takes you there, and with again in an enterprise single sign-on, and it just drives you to there. So we're just here to kind of be the GPS to help you find the answer. Some of which is already the impossible answers are in your unstructured data document repositories, impossible to find. The other things already have systems and mechanisms to find them, but you don't do it because it's a separate login, it's a separate action, separate interface. You got to know how to do it. You got to know how to get there, and you got to know it exists.
Wow!
So it's mind blowing, and again, universally required. There's not.
So how much do you know how much unstructured data there is in the world? Then do you know what that stat is?
Well, is
it like trillions of petabytes or terabytes or whatever? It's something ridiculous.
The hardest part, it's funny because the world talks about big data.
Yeah.
And big data, in general, is
structured
data, which is. But the craziest part about big data is it's not really big compared to unstructured data.
It's tiny data compared to unstructured. Yeah.
Right, and partially because just the size of the files. Right? When you're talking about numbers that are in an Excel spreadsheet or in a database, they're not nearly as large as a PDF with graphics and videos
or a blob file, blob store or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you think about big, it's just a relative term.
What would you call that? If you call, so we call it. Yeah. So your point, big data is like this, the structured side. What is there a kind of a term you would call that covers structured and unstructured? Is it just called data, or is it kind of like called huge data or humongous data or massive data? I don't know what do you call that. I don't know.
Well, it's funny because yes, we refer to it as data, but this is where again, enterprise knowledge management. We're managing the knowledge that that these companies have already paid for.
Right.
The knowledge exists. The other crazy way to look at this is you worked at a company, you then left the company. Mm-hmm. The only artifact that exists likely of your existence in that company are these documents that remain on their servers unused.
Yeah. So, and what do you call that market then? You call it enterprise knowledge management? Is that what
yes.
EKM.
Yeah. We don't add another TLA to the world. We just call it enterprise knowledge management as opposed to giving it a free.
Well, that is a TLA. EKM is a TLA. What are you about?
Exactly. That's right. I have and it's funny because I direct lots of people. I've had lots of employees, marketing, all kinds of things. And the one thing I say is no acronyms. And the reason is because the assumption that somebody understands an acronym on the other side.
Yeah.
And because it's esoteric to your company, it's esoteric to your industry, it's esoteric to your function. And so, yes, a bunch of the people that read it would understand it, but you instantly have the opportunity to make somebody feel less than.
Yeah, but sometimes you have to introduce new language, so you have to create your own lexicon. Yeah. That's what you should do. You should have the Lucy lexicon, the new language, the new Lucy lexicon language.
Well, there's so much language inside of Lucy, and the answer is we do that, not our own lexicon, but for each implementation, we need to understand. So here's an example. Somebody is working in the entertainment industry, movies and the like, and they want to do a query on what was the attendance of Toy Story 3. Mm-hmm. Well, Lucy doesn't, out of the box, understand. She understands what a toy is. She understands what a story is, and she understands the number 3. But when you string those 3 words together, Lucy does not understand that that's the thing.
So the concatenation, the kind of the construct, the model.
Right. So we have to ensure on both initially. So what are all the acronyms? What are those terms? We try to train her in an implementation.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the second thing is we just have a process that says, hey, I didn't get the right answer. It didn't make sense. And so then
a feedback loop. Yeah, feedback loop. Yeah.
And of course, once we realized that she didn't understand that, we needed a list of all the movie titles. Because again, Endgame, I mean, they're just every movie title doesn't make sense to Lucy that it's an entity. They're just words. And so again, there is Lucy is awesome when you start, right? You open it up, you start importing documents. We try to ask those questions where we can up front so we can load in the acronyms and dictionaries and things. But, we're talking about up and running in 6 weeks, not 6 months or 6 years. But what happens is she's great, but it's just like a new employee that starts at your company. She doesn't know everything. She knows she might have subject matter expertise, but she doesn't know your domain expertise.
Yeah.
And so over time and quickly, she learns those things, and you only have to teach her once. But the cool part about Lucy as your star employee is she shows up to work every day, she's never sick, and she won't leave. There's never a better opportunity for her elsewhere.
Yeah, but I want to know about career development. I want to know about talent development. How are you going to develop her? Anyway, so that's it. Thanks for explaining that. I wondered what. Obviously, you're moving that topic forward, which is interesting to learn more about. And it sounds like you're working on a big problem, because that problem's not going to get smaller. It's going to get bigger as we go forward. So. But I suppose a quick question I got was about is to help people understand a bit about your journey. Is there could you give us like a quick pen portrait of you're obviously now CEO of Lucy.ai, I believe. Yeah, that's what takes up most of your waking hours, yeah, when you're not walking through the forest. But what did Dan do before that? How did he get to this place? Is that a chance to understand a bit more about
that? Yeah, it's funny because great journeys, right? We all have. We've been places, done things, seen things, and they make you the whole person you are. So first, married 25 years, to have 3 adult children, and having children is awesome. The whole experience is awesome, and having them leave the nest is awesome. I say that in the nicest of ways. They're whole people. They become whole people, and you get to see through their eyes the world again in cool ways. So I'm really, really excited and proud of all three of our boys. 2 in LA, 1 in Manhattan. So
how old are they then? How old are they now?
20, 23, 26.
Oh wow!
So they're again, they're awesome. They're awesome young men, and also they're still growing. Right. Actually, the way my wife and I discuss this is, we have baked cookies, and all of the ingredients are in there, and they're in the oven, and our job is just to keep the temperature correct. But you can't add, oh, I forgot the baking soda, right? There's no, it starts turning even in their teen years, almost 16 or whatever number you want to pick. But kind of 16 to 27, they're still baking. And then there can be really proud moments inside of that. So my oldest son is an entrepreneur and a finance guy. He's got a double life, and so in his entrepreneurial venture, I was doing a little coaching and helping the team with some elements. And one of the things, there was this legal question. And the legal question was, if our employees are, work a certain number of hours, we have to provide them with health insurance or subsidize the health insurance, which is not a problem you have in the UK, but is a problem in the US.
Yeah, it's quite an expensive problem as well, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, but the proud daddy moment was when my son told his team, we're making enough money, we should just pay their insurance. It wasn't about where the legal line was. Right. It was about doing the right thing. And so that's where you go, see, I knew that's in there. He doesn't always display it, but I knew that's in there.
Is that what you're saying? That was a Mallin trait? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah. Hopefully, it's take care of those people that work for you. Those are our responsibility as CEOs and management teams and leadership teams. And when I have a team of people, I believe that I'm responsible for them and their families, right? At some level. And I don't mean to say, if somebody's not performing, that's not my problem. But if the company's not performing, that is my problem. And it's not just the company, it's all of those individuals. And so that's, you want to talk about what keeps you up at night. It's you got 400 employees, and they each, an average of 3 or 4 people and their families. So you're talking about, 1,200, 1,500, 15,000, whatever those numbers are, individuals that you feed, right? And that's not you're feeding their families too. And so, and treating people with respect and dignity in good times and bad. Those are our responsibilities. Those are real things that CEOs and leadership teams need to understand. And if you're managing just by the spreadsheet, there's no personality of those individuals. There's no families on the spreadsheet. So you need to go, you need to really, really take the responsibility for all of our employees as part of what we do. It's a big thing.
But is this a quick question? Yeah. Is this? I mean, this isn't the first time you've been a CEO, though, is it? I wasn't sure what your.
No. It's let me count the ways. I have. This is literally my fifth kind of startup and process. So, and
but you're still learning.
Well, I used my forest as a tree that stops growing dies. So yeah, I'm learning. I read. I listen. It's kind of a great world where it's not just the formal publishers of business books were the ways we learned 20 years ago, right? Where you attended a seminar or session. And so these, podcasts and the ability for anybody to be an author. And it doesn't mean that everybody should be just listened to because you can publish, but it is so much easier to get educated on lots and lots of things. And as you're, going through those processes and things, you find the right books, they speak to you. They find the right podcasts, you learn from them. The other thing is, where do I learn the most? From my mistakes, not from my success. Right? It's mistakes that teach you. You analyze mistakes. You understand where you should have turned left and you turned right. You spend hours analyzing mistakes. Do you analyze success in the same light? You know, and you can't. Back in my history, I worked at 3M.
Okay. Fantastic. That's a great place. Yeah.
I had a mentor there, a gentleman named Chuck Harstead, and he was the vice president of the office products division, and specifically Post-its started
he
under him.
He was Mr. Post-it. Oh, wow. Fantastic.
Well, Art Fry is the guy who invented the Post-it note, but he was the business unit lead for 17 years.
Wow.
And I used to tell him, and he had, a compound annual growth rate of 45, 50% for 17 years. I mean, insane numbers, right? And I used to tell him, I said, Chuck, how do you know you didn't manage that down by 10%? Right? How do you know when you're succeeding at that kind of level, you didn't actually affect it negatively? Of course, he just laughed at me and said no. And I might add, he's currently an investor in Lucy, so we're still friends. And yeah, absolutely. But it's one of those things where in success you don't learn as nearly as much as you do in failure. And the cool part of my failures is they haven't been fatal. So, inside businesses, there's businesses that fail and die, but we've had failures, we've learned from them, and we've adapted, overcome, changed our processes, and made successful outcomes by learning from our failures.
So do you know Jim McNerney then? Jim McNerney?
So I was already gone when Jim came into 3M. The interesting thing is the day I left 3M in 1996 was the first day I started consulting at 3M. So my new business, so literally in my businesses have been working at 3M since, either myself, I started there in 1988, and then, and we've been working there every day since in some fashion. So when we talk about what does that look like, because a little bit about the journey, but I left 3M and started a company called, had started a company called Oatmeal Media. And Oatmeal Media was an early kind of website purveyor, again, we're talking in 90s. And we were doing very functional websites. 3M spun out a company, Amation, which was the data storage company. Amation actually bought Oatmeal Media. and then we worked inside there. We bought it back. Became with another partner of mine, became Imaginet, and Imaginet grew to be a very large, again, internet applications kind of provider. We sold Imaginet to WPP.
Oh yeah, Martin Sorrell's lot. Yeah,
exactly. Matter of fact, during the transaction, I flew to Scott, my partner, and I flew to London and to have dinner with Sir Martin.
And, right, fantastic.
And so we get to London, we check in the hotel, we take a nap because you want to be on, and then but we turn on CNN in London, and he's on CNN, and we're having dinner with him that night, kind of thing.
Fantastic.
So one of those surreal moments.
Did he mention it on CNN? He says, "Sorry, I've got to cut this interview short because I'm actually meeting Dan and Scott later."
Yes, that was the top of his tongue for sure. And so we ended up, growing that to $100 million kind of agency. Today, it's folded into what is Mirum Worldwide. So I mean, it still exists in the WPP world. So we were inside basically J. Walter Thompson doing
J. Walter Thompson, yeah,
non-JWT work, and so we built Nasdaq.com, we built MerrillLynch.com, we built our Royal Bank of Canada's online trading and portfolio management. We were again in the 90s leading it with what you could do with leveraging the internet, not as just a marketing tool, but as an application tool. U.S. Marine Corps.
So I suppose that's what people call digital now, isn't it? It's like, oh, yes. You're doing digital transformation. Yeah, so that 20 years later than the pioneers like yourself. Yeah.
Right, but we're still doing digital transformation. So that was a thing. We work through our, when you're acquired, you have an employment contract. And so at the end of that, we moved on. But we had to sit on the shelf for 18 months or so. So
non-competes.
Yeah, non-competes. It's fine. We were good, but as entrepreneurs, we didn't know what to do. So Scott, my partner, and I created something in Minnesota. It's called the Minnesota Cup, mncup.org. And it is a statewide entrepreneurial competition. And so today we're in the entry period of year 17 of this competition. And we have helped 10,000 plus entrepreneurs achieve their journey. I just sent a note to one of the winners. They just received $23 million in Series A funding. Again, the participants have, billions of dollars worth of transactions have happened in companies and value out of this Minnesota Cup. So it's really a cool thing. And it was just effectively created because two entrepreneurs couldn't work and were bored. And became part of the infrastructure and how to create companies in Minnesota. So we did that, and then what
would you call that then? Would you call that kind of it's like Silicon Beach is now LA, and vying with Tel Aviv, and you got like Silicon Valley. What would you call this? Silicon Field? Silicon Pasture.
The first answer is it's not technology based, even though there's lots of technology.
Oh, okay.
But you've also given me the opportunity to educate the world on where the first Silicon Valley was.
Okay.
Because it was in Minnesota.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, you can't say that. That's going to shatter everybody's illusion. Yeah.
So back in the day, before Silicon Valley existed, the hub of computing was Minnesota. Control Data Corporation, huge company that still exists, was one of the hubs. Cray computers were here, actually in Wisconsin, just outside of Minneapolis. But one of the things that's amazing, if you look at, has anybody heard of Adobe?
No, I don't know who they are. No, never.
So Adobe acquired a spin-off of Control Data, which was called Authorware. And and the CEO was a guy named Bud Culligan. And Authorware became all of Adobe's animation suite.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and and Culligan became CEO of Adobe.
Okay.
All out of Minnesota, and it was in Control Data. It was called the Plato Project, but it's again just all of that.
Where's Adobe headquartered? Adobe's not headquartered in Wisconsin, is it?
No, not at all. It's in Silicon Valley, right? It's in California. But the idea is that it came from here. RCA, I mean, big mainframes were all here. IBM's AS400 division was here.
Yeah, right.
So again,
what would you call it then, Dan? Would you call it Silicon Pasture or Silicon Field or what?
I think they refer to it as the Silicon Prairie.
Silicon Prairie. I haven't heard that one before. Yeah. That's a good one. Silicon Prairie, like a little house on the prairie. Like good night, John Boy.
Yeah. But and in a great way, Minnesota. I remember when we were pitching to sell the business to WPP. Minnesota had at that time 32 Fortune 500. It must have been headquarters.
Really? Wow.
And so, which was disproportionate. New York has many more, but they also have many more people. So per capita, it's insanely high. And so, great companies like Target and Best Buy are here. And one of the world's largest private companies, Cargill.
Cargill, the private equity firm. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're it's funny, they have private equity, but they own commodities, right? They're
like a conglomerate. Yeah.
Like in the tunes of $70 billion kind of size of.
How far is Milwaukee away from where you
are? Great story there. It's 390 miles, or sorry, it's 310 miles.
Oh, so it's not exactly around the corner then.
No, but let me tell you the story of how I know that number.
Go on.
my at the time 96-year-old grandfather who from Milwaukee was at a party, and I lived in Minneapolis, an engagement party of a cousin or something, and somebody asked me how far is Minneapolis from Milwaukee, and he says 310 miles, just like it was a fact in his head. And I look at him and said, "How do you know that?" He said, "Well, there was a train that used to be called the 400, which went from Chicago to Minneapolis, and Chicago's 90 miles away. So 400 minus 90 is 310, and that's how far it is."
I thought you were going to say something like you've run 310 miles, or you did a relay race, or you did four ultra marathons or something like that, and that was your stop off.
I will be driving that 310 miles tomorrow, and I'm going to celebrate that like you cannot imagine, because tomorrow I am going to visit my father in Milwaukee.
Oh, you are?
Who I have not seen since last Thanksgiving.
So, because of the COVID stuff.
For the COVID stuff. So he's been vaccinated. I've been vaccinated.
Okay.
We're all, and
you're all dosed up. Yeah.
We're all dosed up, and so I will tomorrow night have dinner with my father for the first time in 16 months. So
fantastic.
It's a good thing.
Well, you see, so what you should do, and maybe I don't know if the restaurants are open, but I had the wildest steak night ever, because they've got an amazing restaurant. I don't know if it's still open, called Carnivore in Milwaukee.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So I went. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
It's a family favorite.
Is it?
I mean, it's a yeah. Actually, my cousin's daughter took me there for the first time because it didn't exist before when I was living there. So I left there at 18. So tell me, what did you eat there?
I can't remember. It was where it was. I went to see Miller Brewing in Milwaukee. Yeah, because we were doing some work with Heineken and South African breweries, SAB and Miller, or as it is now, as SAB, South African breweries in South Africa. And it's quite a few years ago. And actually, I didn't realize we went there, we came out, and we looked across the road and realized, oh, that's Harley Davidson. So we then did an impromptu visit to Harley Davidson and did a factory tour around Harley Davidson, like you do, before we flew back to London. It was a client kind of visit quite a few years ago. But then in the evening, before we flew back, we went to this Carnivore restaurant, and the steak knives were massive. You know, it was like half your arm was like a knife, and the meat was so like it was like a doorstep. It was unbelievable. Yeah, that's my reminiscing of Milwaukee. Basically, fly Chicago and go right. Go north.
Yeah,
go north from Chicago.
90 miles, I might add.
So yeah, I mean, I suppose if you're talking about physical geographies, I suppose the you mentioned about the rolling hills of around that area. One of the things we talk about with our guests on the show is about their kind of peaks and valleys. So, what has been their, kind of things that they planned to be amazing, and then maybe things that didn't quite work out to be amazing as they thought they were going to be, but they obviously had a good learning or an experience from that. So, I mean, what would you want to share on those kind of topics? Is something that springs to mind, or something that springs to mind?
Yeah, the answer is there's a lot. There are many of both, right? And the entrepreneurial journey is filled with valleys, and most people don't think of it that way, right? They only think, and we only tell the stories about the peaks. We're so busy, and I'm guilty too, right? I'm here. I want to talk about peaks. I don't want to talk about my valleys, and through the process, the percentage of entrepreneurs who actually go beyond the valley or crash in that valley is high. And so those who have survived or prospered, we don't talk about the valleys. But I can tell you, along my journey, there have been many valleys, and luckily we've been lucky enough not to crash in them. Right? We've survived and rode to the next peak. Usually, huge turning points, right? So I go back 20 years, and we were a company called Imaginette, and literally we had a huge project, just unbelievable client, and we got lost in the weeds and ended up developing just a subcomponent that they kind of wanted, and we ran out of money, and it was this huge moment where we realized we didn't do what we had promised at all, right? And so we had to give back the money, and we had spent all the money. So it was detrimental in all kinds of ways. But in the end, it forced us to add a level of process and project management and sign off, and we created the architecture and infrastructure to ensure that we would do the right things and be successful in the next sets of deliveries. And that painful lesson became absolutely the traction or the tread that allowed us to climb the mountain as we came back from that. And so again, that single issue could have killed the company, and but luckily we were able to survive it. But we learned from it and then made ourselves into a better organization and better for it. Later in the same company, we pitched some business. There was just an insane piece of business, and we were pitching against Boston Consulting Group and other just huge entities. and we lost it. And again, it wasn't really, I don't want to call it a valley. It was just a piece. It was a place. But the work we did to pitch that business became the next two pitches, which allowed us to win the business. It was the groundwork again that allowed us to successfully pitch, again, huge businesses, two pieces of business that each doubled the business again. So it's
kind of like made you step up kind of thing. It made you go to the next level of performance. It made us and allowed us to do it, and allowed us to do it successfully. And it's just those moments that are again turning points in the business. In our current business, Lucy, we the first few years, Lucy did, we'll say, too many things. They were all cool, blow people's minds. But a big component of what we were doing was less repeatable. It was custom work inside of our platform instead of a platform with a little bit of tweaking. And so we had to have this moment where we said, you know what? This isn't scalable. We're either a custom workshop or we're a platform. And as we decided and determined that we were going to be the platform, we had to resign most of our revenue. Sounds like an insane. You had to say no to things, basically.
We had to actually fire clients. Not to say no to future things. We had to let clients go that weren't in the space that we wanted to be in. They were in the space that had helped us get here. And that's just again,
it's a quick question on that though. Was that where you were doing work for obviously multiple clients, but you were then every engagement was different. You didn't have like a standard way of doing things. It was like everything was personalized to that client. Is that right? Was that early stage of revenue?
Yes. And when we say that, it was built on a platform, and it still was, again, Lucy as a platform, but we had to optimize around custom KPIs for each implementation, as opposed to, today we have a product. This is what the product does, and every company, but we sell to the Fortune 1000. Needs our product and services. So it's a much different situation as opposed to, we can make it do what you want to do. It's kind of like,
it's a bit like that classic thing about, whatever the requirements are, the answer is yes. You become too infinitely flexible.
We were infinitely flexible and mind-blowingly successful. Just it's not scalable. It's scalable with people as opposed to scalable with reselling the same software and hardware kind of solution. So,
and how do you deal with the loss of that revenue then? Did you have to recapitalize the business, or how did you deal with that?
There's been capitalization along the way, so we consumed too much capital earlier in the process. Though really the net effect was the appearance of flat revenue, right? So we were growing, and then we flattened because we replaced the revenue as we got rid of it, and then we started growing again. So in the sales chart, it looks like we flattened out, even though we replaced say virtually all of our revenue in over an 18-month period.
So you described that as a classic pivot to a platform business. Is that right?
Well, the core of the platform was always there. We were just doing three things instead of one thing, and we just narrowed it down to the one thing that was where we wanted to be. The other piece is we're in the AI space, knowledge management. We've been doing this for 6 years. The core piece that we're doing today didn't work nearly as well 6 years ago. So it's easy to say I should have been there. Well, we were there. It just wasn't ready yet. this is very much so leading edge technology that, or it was leading edge technology 6 years ago, and today it's just what people are doing. Right? They need a tool. They need something in the space. So there's a classic old book by a guy named Jeffrey Moore called "Crossing the Chasm," and it's about the adoption of technology. Well, we were on the leading edge of that today, and what he refers to as the herd in the center of the bell curve are now adopting, right? And so again, we were doing the right things in the right time, and we were a little ahead of our time. So we were working for food, working for money, but we needed to be the platform needed to be what we were doing.
Yeah, I suppose that's the thing, is because these platform businesses now are now obviously, quite popular as the positioning, but then I suppose it drives a different way of actually funding the business, but also actually how you organize yourselves as well. I mean, did it mean organization you had to staff the business differently as well? Did you have to restructure the team?
Well, we had the right, again, on the product and the development side, we had the right team. We took resources off of what would have been the custom work and just pulled them in. It pulled them into the primary product. So a little bit of restructuring on that side. A big piece of what we do in this, SaaS software, software as a service. We sell something, but then we have a whole customer success team that really makes it easy to roll out, expand, and gain usage and support inside all of the companies that we do business with. And so that team existed. And the good news is we've had to expand that team, but that was because we have more customers. Well, that's always the goal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what they say, because I think there's always this thing about, you point like a head of sales and a head of marketing. But then some companies, I think, in the SaaS space don't usually think about customer success until they get a churn issue. I don't know if you got the same view.
No, the answer is we've had customer success all along in a good way, and it's so important. And really, from a SaaS business perspective, and even what I described before as the flat revenue. It was effectively churn. It's slightly different because we chose the change in direction. But really, the growth engine has to be your existing clients, and it has to be their continued use, but also growth inside the company. So, we start in a company with 50 or 100 seats. We go to 500 to 1,000 to thousands of seats. And so we have to be doing that in addition to, kind of that new logo model where we have to also
it's not just about getting them over the line for that initial contract. It's also then how you get them to adopt and use.
Yes, and we have a whole adoption methodology. We help with internal communications, help with the process, help with the training. And it's a win-win. Clients don't bring us in because they don't want to use it. They bring us in because they want to use it. So it seems like a self-serving thing to help them use it, but really that is what they want. The client who signs for Lucy and says we want to adopt it doesn't want to have it fail because it wasn't used. They want to have it succeed, and they want us to help them do that. And bring forward the best practices and organizational change management kind of concepts to say, hey, use this. And so we have a client where one of the executives literally sends out kind of a quarterly reminder. Hey, don't ask Lucy first. We want you to we want to ensure that you're using Lucy. And that the questions flow there, and they even have and their support model has changed from centers of excellence, subject matter experts that were available, and now they are available, but only after you've used Lucy. So if Lucy doesn't answer your question or can't for some reason, The methodology is through Lucy to make the request for more information. And it goes both to kind of an internal user-supported area, so users can answer the questions, but those answers end up flowing back into Lucy or flows to the subject matter expert.
I still think, that you've got to get some kind of partnership with Scarlett Johansson. So what you could do is you could surprise your customers, yeah, by say somebody's not using Lucy, you then send Scarlett into the customer and say, why are you not interested in working with me? How cool would that be? How cool would that be?
So she hasn't returned my call yet.
I'll call her. I've got some contacts in Los Angeles. I'll call her and just say, look, will you ring Dan back? He's getting really depressed about you not ringing him, right? I know you keep calling me. I know you like speaking to me, Andrew, but in fact, we'll get you on the G&T sessions in the future. Big shout out to Scarlett. But Dan is feeling left out. Please call him. He's the CEO of Lucy.ai. He's even named it after you. You got to look after him.
We could, we're messing around with some technologies, and one of which, of course, is the ability to have Lucy be both a person, but a person that could talk to you, right? So, what if that person was Scarlett Johansson? And so she just became our Lucy, and so it would definitely help with a segment of user adoption. I'm not sure it would help with all user adoption. But.
Well, I don't know if you've seen that latest. Well, it's been out for a while. There's this thing called Cameo. You've seen the Cameo app. Have you seen that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's exactly there's a bunch of work happening in that space where, again, you can have an actual person and speaking and looking and interacting with you.
Oh, right, okay.
And again,
rather than just a recording. Yeah.
And we're we're looking at lots of technologies. I don't think that's something that will add value today in our interactions, and mostly because our answers aren't necessarily words. They're often pictures or charts, graphics, other things. So it's not like you say, you ask Lucy, how many ounces are there in a cup or whatever, and the answer would be 8 ounces. Which could just say that. And you say, what does the sales growth look like for Excedrin in the UK? And then up comes the chart. So it's so the personification of it isn't as powerful. It's also, we look at when we built an interaction unit, so you could using Alexa or Siri kind of thing, where you could ask Lucy questions through an audio interface. But the problem is we don't have an audio return. So,
right.
So again, I have a prototype of an Alexa that hooks up to the projection system in the room or something. So the answer could come up on the screen, kind of model, but not. Again, it's not. We don't have an audio.
I suppose that's the thing, is you want to make sure you use technology that doesn't make the humans lazy. So you can't do too much, otherwise it just get too lazy, don't they?
Well, there's also there's different views of what AI is and should do, and there's artificial intelligence being making decisions for you, crunching huge data sets and coming up with the anomalies that help you that guide decisions. When to turn off a valve, when to turn on a valve in a process. Where we use the word AI, but think of it as augmented intelligence. And the idea being that we make information readily available to those who make good decisions with it. So we're not actually trying to replace knowledge workers. We're trying to allow knowledge workers to quickly find the information and then use that information to make better, faster decisions on behalf of their organizations.
Oh, so it's a bit like a motorcycle and sidecar.
Right. Yeah, you're going back to Harley Davidson again. there's a whole lot of, again, we want to save companies money, allow them to stop searching for data and allow them to use data, allow them to stop rebuying data to use what they've already purchased. And so there's huge cost savings. And the hardest one to quantify isn't the cost of searching or the cost of rebuying data. That's the easy numbers. It's actually the speed of decision, right? If I have to buy data and it takes me 30 days to execute and so on and so forth, or I just have the data and I can make a decision today. And that 30 days or 60 days or 90 days is really the expense to the business that nobody can think about or calculate in the same light than just speed. And speed wins. Fastest to market, better decisions, faster reactions to your competitors, whatever it is. Those are the winning situations for most organizations.
So I suppose that's a good segue into that. My next question was about kind of the future, because I know that it seems to me that AI has been it's been an increasingly amplified phrase, but obviously within the overall umbrella of technology. What's your view on what's going to happen in the future? Any kind of perspectives on, are you kind of excited about what's happening in the future, or are you kind of concerned, or any perspectives on that?
It's all technology can be used for good or evil, and so the biggest thing that's going to happen to all of us is really the next generations of computing power. So, we have AI, we have self-driving cars, we have encryption, we have all these things that are going on, security mechanisms. And then, but as we amplify what computers can do, and I mean amplify exponentially, not just Moore's law kind of stuff, but you start looking at quantum computing and quantum calculations, all of a sudden, as an example, all encryption that we have today becomes child's play to a quantum computer. And that should scare people, right? So, because the ability to process so much faster, 100 times, 1,000 times faster, all of a sudden algorithms that couldn't be cracked in years could be cracked in minutes. That said, that's the evil side. On the good side, all of a sudden, I'm already processing, volumes of information inside Lucy today that couldn't be reviewed, read, and queried by 100 people in 3 years. And we're doing that in seconds. But if you start doing it even faster and better, feed more information and have, we're always looking at a segment of a corporation's data, but if you're looking at all of the data, just so much more can happen as the speed of processing. Start thinking about, self-driving cars. And again, I know people are, in the U.S., the car is your power, your freedom, all kinds of things. The reality is the biggest issue with self-driving cars is cars that aren't being self-driven doing things that they don't expect, right? If everybody was operating under the algorithm, it would be safer. It's the mix of cars that makes it the most dangerous. And then the last piece, like all new technology, self-driving cars are being held to a higher standard of safety than the status quo, right? We have 50,000 deaths on our highways a year, yet one self-driving car death is unacceptable according to the kind of the news media. And
yeah, it's like a different standard. It's a different benchmark, isn't it? It gets all that one instant gets all the amplification. Yeah.
Right. And there was just actually a car crash, a Tesla crash in the US, and supposedly there was no driver in the driver's seat, and the fire burned for 4 hours and all kinds of things. Well, it turns out first the car wasn't being self-driven. Matter of fact, they hadn't even purchased the self-driving package for that vehicle. the car was put out, extinguished in 10 minutes. And, and it's just, and unfortunately 2 people died, right? Well, people die in car crashes, but we make such a big deal out of it. And again, it was a Tesla that crashed. Teslas can't, they're cars, and if you're actually driving them, they're going to crash. And the truth is, any self-driving car, something's going to happen.
I've been in a Tesla though. They do drive themselves.
No, they're awesome. My wife has one, and it's truly unbelievable. I mean, if you think about, you put it in that mode, and it really does. The hardest part is letting it do it, because you're sitting in the seat and you're hitting a turn, and is it going to turn? Is it going to turn? Do I have to? You have to become comfortable that it's going to do what you think it's going to do, or what it should do. But once you kind of relax just a little bit and let it drive, again, it's using the stripes on the road. It's using the barriers and things. But
it's also kind of the thing that I found incredible is that, you're going along, you put it into auto thing. I wasn't driving, I was a passenger, and then it actually literally, in moving traffic in London, it was actually then, keeping the distance from the car in front, then actually slowing down. And then when you took, it's amazing, absolutely, truly amazing how it's the kind of thing you watch on the sci-fi movies, and actually you just really literally you're sat in it. So it's fantastic. It's quite an advancement, and the truth is it is safer than driving yourself, and that's what we should be. And of course, the one thing that everybody says, well, but I could save my. I'm the one I'm a better driver that I won't get in a crash. Well, I'm the best driver in the world, and I have crashed cars, right? I've hit things. So clearly that, if I'm the best driver in the world, that didn't work. And we call them accidents because they happen. The moral of the story is don't get in a car with Dan, because you might crash. Yeah.
Or only when his wife lets him take the Tesla.
Oh, okay. So in terms of what's going on in your world today, then what are you most excited about? I mean, it sounds like you're in a really interesting area, and it's quite transformational what you're working on. What is, obviously, you're running a growing, exciting company. What excites you personally?
Well, it's interesting. The first part, inside the company, we have a roadmap, and we're out 2 years in what we're doing, and in general, the cool part is we're already blowing minds with what we do today and the capabilities. So we're still we still appear as magic and not something that's perceived as status quo. But a year ago, it would take 60 seconds, 30 to 60 seconds for our queries to hit. Today, we're under 4 seconds. So the magic is only increasing, and the things that we're doing. The hard part is when you're in that space, and even in technology, what's going to exist in 10 years is really impossible to know. It's because it is science fiction. Short of will I get to go to Mars? That's a lifetime question. Or true space travel. I've always been stare at the moon, stare at the planets, and kind of envision what's up there. So you
signed up for Elon's Mars mission then?
Luckily, and I say luckily, I'd love to do that. At the same note, I don't think I'm going to probably age out to the reality of consumer space travel. I know there's some trips happening today, but I don't see that they're going to be sending 70-year-olds into space too readily. I think it's going to start as a younger person's.
You've got a long way to go yet, Dan. Don't worry. One of our previous guests said Dennis, who works in SpaceX, he's running SwissPod in Switzerland. I'm sure we can get you up the list. Few phone calls.
Well, yeah, Scarlett Johansson and I will go to space together.
Here we go. He's already planning that one out. There you go. You'd rather go with Elon or Scarlett. It's a double-headed coin.
The interesting thing is, I would, or the three of us, because Elon would be pretty awesome to travel with, and just the things that he takes on, right? The automotive industry, which is something I spent a lot of time historically working in and with. The fact that to build a car, to create the concepts around that, are an absolute insane challenge, and he's done it, right? And he's transformed the world with his innovations and technology, and starting from scratch, thinking differently. Not the only thing that a Tesla has similar to a combustion engine car from the standards are 4 wheels and a steering wheel, right? I mean, the rest is innovative and new and different. And now there are Rivians and Fiskars, and I mean, there's going to be a dozen new car companies, most of which will fail or be brought into the big auto companies. All of which is fine as long as we innovate. I did. Oh my God! I received an offer. I don't know if it's sitting here, but I received an offer the other day from General Motors, and I immediately took a picture of it and I sent it to the CEO of General Motors, and I said, "This is exactly why you guys don't get it." They were for $99, special offer, $99. They were willing to update the navigation system in my Suburban for $99.
$99.
Right. I said, and it was on sale from $399 or something, or $299. And I'm like, you literally still don't understand what's going on. And I said, a few years ago, I went in to buy a new Suburban, and they told me, oh, the center console is now a charging port. You just set your phone on and it wirelessly charges. I said, cool. I put my phone down and it didn't charge. They go, oh, what phone do you have? And I said, well, I have the, whatever. It was the newest phone at the time. They go, well, sorry, that one doesn't work because this came out before then. And I didn't buy the car for 2 years because they didn't software update.
So what you're saying there is the gap between the new players like Tesla in automotive is so wide that maybe some of these guys will never catch up. Is that what you're kind of implying?
It's hard to fathom that somebody thinks updating my map software is worth money to me today, when it should just be connected and constantly available.
Yeah, you should be wrapped into this service. Yeah, the ongoing service, the subscription. Yeah,
right. And updated. Just wirelessly
which
in
is
my garage.
It's back to the point you said about rethinking the whole customer journey and the whole automotive experience, which is what Elon and the team have done, really, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, and even when you compare phone technologies, and you look at the iPhone versus Android, and they're both and currently. The Android hardware it's equivalent or better in different places. The software is equivalent or better in different places. So I don't think that is an issue. The issue is that Apple brings along everybody to the upgrades of software, and Android still has the issue that you're on this version or this version or this version. And so, because they can't bring
they create islands, don't they? Unfortunately, yeah.
Right. So every version becomes its own island. And again, if you look at the success of the Apple is, no, really, everybody upgrades until the phone no longer can, and then you upgrade the phone. And so.
Well, I don't want to get into any Apple stuff like battery gate or anything like that. So we'll move on from there.
No. Well, and you can argue there. You know, I believe in all of that as it does happen. Anyway, the bottom line is that the classic car companies, the big players still. I mean, I'm talking about last week, are still offering me to pay for a software upgrade to my car. It's an $80,000 car.
It's a no-brainer. You should do it. Why not? It's a bargain. It's like, it's reduced 75% for one day only. Where do I sign?
The other element, while I'm bashing them, the other element is I don't use the navigation system in the car because the
use your phone. Use your phone.
I use my phone. I use my phone because it's integrated to my calendar. I use my phone because it's one click. I use my phone because it will actually show up on their screen anyway. But to input an address in their device is so hard, and I can't transfer it into their version. So I use my phone anyway. Bottom line is they don't get it. They don't get it, and they still don't get it.
Did you get a response, by the way? Not yet. Not yet. Okay.
Well, and I actually do expect a response. I don't think Mary Barra is going to be the one who responds, but I assume that somebody does respond. But the interesting thing also is the timeliness of responses.
Yeah.
You
don't think they'd be tweeting you then, like that Elon would do?
Right. Well, and I could have tweeted about it. I probably would get it. The funniest part is having set up the response systems for big companies, the people who are answering tweets and answering the phone and answering the emails are all the same people in most organizations. Yet the timeliness of a tweet is now, and it becomes a different prioritization. Again, they're missing the boat. We live in a 24-hour news cycle. We live in, I can get stuff delivered today or tomorrow, and yet I can't get an answer to an email for a week. So
yeah, I know what you mean.
And that's not General Motors. That's everybody. I mean, I'm just saying that the big boys. They have.
I want to say I seem to have triggered you a bit there.
I just you talk about the future, and we have companies still living in the past. That's always my concern. Electricity, right? Solar powered everything. We got to. The plastics recycling. We've come to a realization that plastics recycling is a lie. So we all are separating plastics here, and then they get thrown into the dump. It's just a perception thing. Like I want to be able to do it, and we need to. All of the focus that we need to have innovation around is around sustainability and making it economical and appropriate to do the right things for the planet.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's one of my guests the other week was is going to be published shortly. They talk about this kind of triple bottom line now. So it's profit, people, and planet. So it's that kind of thing, that kind of triangular bottom line, rather than just looking purely at one of those dimensions, which I think is something for every CEO to think about.
Yeah, I mean, the zero carbon footprint of your organization, right, and supply chain, and it's got to be phased in. We can't. It's not like I can throw a switch and become zero carbon footprint. But these trees behind me, I planted 30,000 of them. And that's a good start.
That's hell of a number, that, isn't it? 30. How long did it take you to plant 30,000 trees?
Well, we did it over 2 years, but we were planting 2-year-old kind of seedlings, so they were a foot long, and you actually do it with a tractor, but one at a time, so it
Oh, so you kind of lay them out in a row, kind of thing. You drop them in, basically.
Yeah, there's one, I guess, just one plow and then two wheels, and so it plows. You stick you're sitting on not on the tractor, but behind the tractor. Somebody else is driving it, and you're putting them in the ground, and then the wheels tamp them down. And then for a couple of years, you kind of have to take care of them until they get.
So they find their own roots, not find their own feet, but find their own roots. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And,
so one of the things I was going to finish off with was about, I suppose, given we got an increasing number of people listening to this podcast. Every week we publish a couple of episodes if we can to keep the momentum going with the podcast. And I suppose one of the things that people have given feedback to me was about the diversity of guests that we've had on the show, but also those golden nuggets, those insights, and those kind of thoughts around what they've learned, what the guest has learned, and what they would try and share to help people that maybe earlier on their journey, or just starting out, or maybe have gone down some peaks and valleys. So any thoughts on that kind of topic area?
Again, I deal a lot with the larger companies, and the inertia in large companies in doing what they have been doing or not wanting to move and just stay at rest is harmful to them. And it's just one of those moments where you having worked inside large organizations and seeing the inefficiencies that exist, and again, these companies make money, they're doing great, yet if you could just turn up the volume a little bit, what would that change be or do? But they also chop off people's heads, so for experimenting. And so I just encourage people to experiment, right? Stretch yourself, personally, stretch your organization, do things that might change the world, because we won't change the world by not experimenting, and we won't improve incrementally or exponentially without trying. And there's so much that we that forces us, fear and what happens if it doesn't work. And so incent people to try as opposed to incent people not to try. And if we can do that, everybody will find the best paths, right? I'm not saying that all these things work, but the one way they don't work is if nobody tries them. And there's such innovation happening and opportunity. And self-driving cars, it's funny because it's science fiction, but it's already real and everybody knows it. Yet most people haven't tried it. Most people, it's not in their ballyhoo. And it will all be safer for that. And the various things. And it doesn't matter what you do or where you're doing it. I mean, every aspect of life has these improvements available. And so let's just try them on, see what works, help people get better. These technologies aren't going to be 100% out of the box. The best thing that Tesla has today is all the miles their cars have been self-driven, because they record data and they can simulate the data and make it better by using that. And that today is their competitive advantage. They have millions of miles in their database so that they can simulate the next generations of the self-driving. So that only comes by people adopting and using, trying, and put yourself out. It's okay to fail, but you got to put yourself out to even try to succeed.
So it sounds like being brave and bold, and if you do come up with an idea, don't give up. Kind of think about, who do you get to? Well, how do you create something that can better the world? I suppose does that make sense as well? It's kind of like working on something that's actually worthwhile, and I suppose people kind of iconize these guys, I suppose, but there are some things you can learn from them. But I mean, it sounds like that. It sounds like your journey's going to the next level. I know you can't release the news on this podcast, but I'm sure that'll come out in the future, which is great to hear. So all power to you, Mr. Mallin. So I was just going to say that thank you very much for coming on the show today. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, and look forward to watching the evolution of Scarlett brackets Lucy into the future, and you walking down the red carpet at some point in the future when you're getting an Oscar for AI innovation. So that's maybe I'm Andrew Turner, but this was Dan Mallin, who's the co-founder and CEO of Lucy.ai. And that was Andrew Turner, founder and host of the G&T Sessions podcast. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Dan.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. It was wonderful.
Take care. Have a good day.